Just beginning here. Started in 1 second. I need to open up the chat room in case anyone decides to come in and join us. Competing against Plain Talking UK and the Airline Pilot Guy show will be coming up here in a little bit. But I wanted to make sure I have time now to go ahead and do this. So pop out the chat there. There's some people here. Hello, people. Making sure everyone in the chat room can hear me. It means they can hear me. YouTube can hear me because I'm trying a different way to record the podcast today. So we'll see if until I get some conversation. Oh, good. Thank you, Mariana. You can hear me. That's great. Okie dokie. All right, let's get started. What day is today? Hey, it's May 4th. May the 4th be with you. I like Star Wars, but I'm not that big of a Star Wars fan. By the way, if you want to know what I'm drinking, this is called a brandy slush. Summertime drink. It's hot outside. Brandy, orange juice, lemonade, and you top it. You freeze that, and it makes a slush, and then you top it with like some 7-Up or Sprite or Squirt. Good stuff. And I'm drinking this so I don't have to go to work tonight. That's right. They keep on calling for overtime, so my wife handed me a drink, so I couldn't go to work. So, without any further ado, let's start. Flying Life Podcast, episode 35, recorded May 4th, 2018. Welcome to the Flying Life Podcast, a podcast about Flying Life Podcast. I really can't talk. Okay, you guys can't hear the music. All right, well, we'll figure that out later. Like I said, it's different. It's new. Flying Life Podcast. Well, I don't even remember. I'm doing no show notes. This is just going to keep going. That's why this is going to be fun. Welcome to Flying Life Podcast, a podcast about just that. Flying, aviation, and my life. I'm Dispatcher Mike, a dispatcher for a major airline based here in the United States. A little bit different of a show today. I didn't do any prep work. I got a drink. I set up the MacBook, I set up the microphone, and everything like that. And so there's no news. We'll probably talk about a little about life, but the main focus and the main topic I want to do this is I got my butt handed to me at work yesterday, and I want to talk about it. I want to talk about, and I knew going in that it was going to be a busy day and I was going to get my butt kicked. So we'll start with that. So let's go ahead and right into the topic. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to make sure everything's good outside. Naomi's disciplining the children. Always a good thing for the background of a podcast. Yelling at children. All right, so yesterday, Yesterday I worked at Strategic Route Desk, and it was. Well, I'd love to edit it in post, Mariana, except I can't cut my own voice out. Okay, I think they're done. Oh, it's gotta be great. Well, I'm glad you guys can't hear it. That means maybe the microphone can't hear it. Let me back up here. Oh, maybe not. Yeah, maybe very faintly in the background. Anyway, so yesterday at work, I was working that new area, the strategic planning team, SPT, the ATC coordinators, pretty much whatever we call them. Called differently in different airlines. At my airline, we call it the SPT. So I was working there in the SPT. I was working the strategic route desk, and this is the desk that goes and works, deals with ATC reroutes, and I'll go through and talk about each thing here briefly. I should probably grab a pad of paper and a pen so I can write all these different topics down. That is a glitter highlighter. Not very good for writing with. There we go. All right, so we'll talk about ATC reroutes. All right, so basically the desk deals with ATC reroutes and airspace flow programs, or AFPs. That's the main purpose of the desk. Now, yesterday, to set the situation up, there was a line of weather from when we started the shift. It was from, I think, was the Illinois-Wisconsin border all the way down through Texas, in north towards El Paso, down all the way. So it's a big sweeping line of thunderstorms. We know this is going to be a constraint. I knew this was going to be a problem. I tweeted it out the night before that I was going to bed. I was going to get my butt handed to me at work because I know that the National Airspace System doesn't handle very well a line of thunderstorms going from crossing the whole country. It doesn't work very well. It doesn't work well with transcons or anything like that. It's not a very conducive. You can't fly through thunderstorms. Just plain theory, you can't. So while we're going through this, and I sit down and we start talking about it, I came in. There's always some of these ATC reroutes. So what an ATC reroute is, it's a structured route that the command center builds to move traffic in a specific route between two airports. For example, yesterday they had a reroute that took the entire East Coast to the southwest, to the San Diego, Las Vegas, LA, any other airports, Phoenix, and basically the southwest. So the whole eastern half of the country and all the airports there. So that'd be your JFK, Charlotte, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Orlando, Miami, all of that. All of those were sent over one fix in Texas. So now you have all of the transcons. This is why I record at night. Now you distracted me. All right, you have all of the transcons that are filtered down over one fix in Texas, and it was not a good thing. And then, well, everyone going eastbound also flew over that one fix in Texas. So basically, the whole route came down. If you can picture the United States, you have all these airplanes from New York, Philadelphia, Charlotte, Atlanta, Miami, Orlando, are all now filtered to come up to a fix called Levo, which is right near New Orleans, and then fly in a single file line to El Paso, and then it kind of broke off and went to the other fixes. But this put a lot of pressure and a lot of constraint in the Houston Center airspace. Now, Houston Center, and it goes to workload. and it goes to a workload issue. And I understand that. And you can't have, 500 extra airplanes, just throwing a random number out there, flying in one dude's airspace, one dude's fix. Now, this one controller who was coming to work, now had all these extra airplanes that he had to work. And now that controller has too much work and too many airplanes, and now he can't keep the picture straight in his head, which is now a safety issue on the ATC side. So now you have this safety issue on the ATC side because now you're overworking a controller, and you can't really split his airspace up really, as far as I understand. If there's any center controllers out there that want to come on and talk about this with me, I'd more than love to sit down and chat with you all. Just like I said, if there's anyone that works in the command center that wants to come on anonymously and talk, I'd love to do that too, because I've been in the command center and I kind of understand some things. So we'll talk about that as well. But that's basically my ATC plug. So now you have this issue, and we saw it happening, and we knew it was going to happen, and we knew that they were going to come together, and they were going to. There was going to be bad. We just saw it happening. It was like watching something in slow motion bad. You could see it happening, but you can't reach out and do anything about it. So eventually, about 11 o'clock, the glass fell, the jar broke, the little boy took his finger out of the dam, whatever you want to call it. Crap hit the fan about 11 o'clock in the morning. And that's when Houston Center says, nope, we're not taking any more traffic. We will not take any more airplanes at all over this fix. We quit. They threw up the white flag, and they said, we're done. We got to figure something else out because this isn't working for us. Because the command center was making everybody fly over this one fix, opposed to splitting it and having people fly north of the line and fly up over Canada and using the CAN routes to go westbound and escape routes and things like that. The other tools that they have weren't implemented, in my opinion. Again, if there's someone from the command center that wants to come and talk on the podcast, I'd love to talk to you about it. I think yesterday was a day of learning for many people involved, me being one of them. So anyway, all of that happened. So let's talk about these canned routes and these things that come out. So what happens is there's an area in the command center. The command center is the ATC command center that is out in Warrenton, Virginia. It's co-located with Potomac Approach, which is Washington Approach. And they go through and they find a constraint. Weather, Masters Golf, the Dayton Air Show, Berkshire Hathaway is having a huge convention this week in Omaha. Well, there were structured routes into and out of Omaha for that. A constraint on the system. It can be anything. And these guys build up these routes and then publish them to the airlines and all the ATC users that get them in advisories. And so these advisories come out, and it was my job to look at the advisory and then disseminate that advisory to the dispatchers. Well, about 11 o'clock, they were up to advisory 90. And the advisory numbers start again over every day at 0 Zulu. So at 0Z, the advisories start again at advisory number 1. And it goes by Z day, not local time day, but Zulu day. So when I got in, advisory 40 was already active. But by the time they pulled some workload off me of reading these advisories and sending them out because they implemented some other programs. So these advisories come out, they get sent out, and dispatchers have to then file their flights if they're affected on those routes. For example, if you are flying like yesterday, JFK to LA, if you were not on the FAA required route, you then had to you were going to get rerouted to it. ATC was required to reroute you to the new route. Jennifer in the chat room is asking, what's the average number of advisories? I think on a good normal day, less than 100. Like on a normal day, 50. I mean, it like a really good day, 50, but it's not many. Yesterday was a very advisory heavy day because you had we'll get into it. We had ground delay programs, airspace flow programs. It was a busy day. So going through it, in this we had all of that going on. So at 11 o'clock, like I said, the jar fell. Everything hit the fan. I think it was about 11. It could have been earlier. It could have been 10. All I know is I knew it was about to happen. So I went to the break room to get myself a cup of coffee and go to the bathroom because I knew I wasn't leaving my desk for much longer after that. And maybe it was 9:40, whatever. Time doesn't matter. It was very early and it wasn't good. It was busy. So as I said earlier, Houston Center threw up a white flag, and that white flag said, nope, we can't do it anymore. We need to slow the traffic down through our airspace. We can't have it anymore. So in order, there's a couple of tools that air traffic control has to turn down in airspace, basically, and slow things down. I'm gonna move this way just a little bit. The video changing because of the camera, because of the window, is annoying me. All right, that's better. Maybe not. Little things, people. All right. So writing down what time this is so I can edit it out later. So as we're going through, and their command center has different ways to slow down in a constraint. And we've talked a little about those on a couple of podcasts ago. But we'll just review again. The ground, if it's an airport problem, you can do a ground stop and a ground delay program, and you could shut off traffic that way. And you then meter, and everyone gets a wheels up time and to go to that airport. So no big deals there. That's if it's an airport problem. Well, this wasn't an airport problem. This was an airspace problem. This was a Houston Center problem, an Albuquerque Center problem. So what we're getting cut off from, and the way that they can slow it down, is air traffic control can build an airspace flow program, or an AFP. And what an AFP is, it's a lot like a ground delay program for an airport, except if it's not for an airport. It's for a chunk of airspace. They can literally draw a line on the map and said, if you have flights flying across this line, we're going to have a wheels up time for you, and there will be a wheels up time. So ATC can do this and look at the number of planes through an area through a number of ways. The first one is an FEA, a flight examination area. I believe that's the E stands for. But basically, it's a counter. Like in the road, you have the traffic counters that they put up, the little black things they put across the road because the government, the city wants to know how many people use that road and if it needs to be expanded. And so they put out this counter in this line, and you can see how many airplanes are set to go across that line every hour, like, because the system knows historically what flights fly through that area, what routings you have through that area, and all of that. So they set up the line and they set a rate, and I don't even remember what rate they set. Maybe it was 35 airplanes an hour, 40 airplanes an hour, but it was relatively low for that area. So they did that for the eastbounds. Well, then they set up an AFP pretty much right in the same line for all the people coming eastbound. So now we have an AFP for the westbounders and an AFP for the eastbounders. And again, the goal of this AFP was to slow down the traffic across the through South Texas. No big deal. That's 2 AFPs. It's manageable. I think Acme had about 60. I think we had about 60 flights in each of them. I think one of them, 005 and HU9 were the name of the 2 AFPs, and maybe it was a little bit more. It was a decent number of airplanes that we had flights stuck in there. Now that wasn't it. That wasn't why it was so bad. To top it off, the weather was also going to be encroaching up on the northeast, or if it was forecasted to be encroaching up on the northeast as well. And so they put out the famous the Cleveland Center AFP and the Washington Center AFP, A05 and A08. So in a matter of a few minutes, I go from having 0 AFPs and just doing reroutes to having 4 AFPs with, I'd say, almost 300 air flights, having slots that I now have to manage and quickly get taken care of, going in and out of the New York area and the transcon routes and the flights flying to and from the south, basically the west to the southeast. Acme having a large hub in the southeast pretty much covered all of our transcon flying. And it was a butt kicker. I'm going to take a drink here. All right. So these AFPs came out. And like I said, an AFP is just a line in the sky. For those not watching the video, think of a line on a piece of paper, right? It's just a line. And for those in the drawing, watching the video, I'll show you up here. It's just a line, right? And so if you cross that, as I said, if you cross that line with your route, kind of like looking like this, you got a wheels up time, right? Now, the thing with AFPs is you don't have to fly across that line. Even though you're supposed to fly across that line and they think you're going to fly around that line, you can come around it to the north. You can come around it to the south. Now, going around to the south yesterday was not very much an option because yesterday the south was down over the Gulf of Mexico and in Mexico's airspace, and that wasn't going to really help out. It wasn't really an option to fly through the Mexican airspace. So you go north. And so as these AFPs are coming out, as we're looking at the slots, the job now is to identify flights that could economically route out of the AFP. And once you route them out of the AFP, before the dispatcher actually hits the file button, you can take and sub that flight and to the bottom of the program. Basically you're putting them at the end of your airline's line, which means you're moving up other airplanes into their slot, which is reducing the delays on the other flights. Now, with the reduction of the delays on the other flights, you basically now are making your airline run more on time with less of a delay. And these delays were massive, especially the HU9s. And these were 2 to 3 hour delays because of flying through that line. So we identified 14 flights out of Atlanta going to the west that we were able to route out of the line. Now, yesterday, to route out of the line, you had to fly out of Atlanta up over Nashville, Evansville, Indiana to St. Louis. For the aviation geeks, the actual fixes were Nashville, Pocket City, Centralia. No, actually, the command center said St. Louis. But on the way back, on the eastbound, because now that was our eastbound flights. So we got 14 airplanes to route out of it. And we added I think one flight that we were going to sub out had 400 minutes of delay that it took. So we almost tripled its average delay of the AFP and took it to the bottom of the program, allowing our other flights that had to fly through the line that wasn't economical to route out of. Like we had a flight to Atlanta, El Paso. You weren't going to fly over Nashville and St. Louis to get to El Paso. You had to cross the line that was on the line. Basically ran Memphis, just north of Memphis, all the way down to into the Gulf to the tip of Texas, kind of like a beam that way. So that's kind of where the line showed out there. So once we did that, and once we got the sub outs and got the dispatchers to route things out, things were a little bit better. I was able to manage it better, and someone else took some of the workload of actually reading through the advisories and everything like that, and it was okay. It was still busy. The problem I had in the morning when all this was happening, I think the workload problem I had, every time I tried to get something done, my phone rang, or someone else came over with a problem, or someone else needed to talk to me. It was very busy, and it was really hard to manage. Like it was nonstop. I literally was sitting there writing notes to myself and making check marks to make sure I wasn't missing anything or doing anything incorrectly. It was challenging. It was sucked. I would say it sucked. It was really busy, but it was fun busy. I mean, it's kind of that busy, like you don't know how you get in that in one of my master's classes in business. It's called flow. You get in a flow where it's your area of workload, and you're so busy in your work you don't realize how much time has elapsed. And so I got into this flow big time yesterday. I have this group on Twitter that I'm in, and it's pretty active. And I saw my last message, and there was like at 9:46, and I didn't pick up my cell phone again at work yesterday until I think it was 4:15, 4:30. So that whole chunk of time, 10 to 4, gone. I didn't have lunch, didn't have a time to eat lunch. It was literally just nose to the grindstone, trying to get flights going and advocating for Acme and getting our flights going and trying to get the flights that are in there going is basically what we were trying to do. Yeah. So what else do I want to talk about yesterday? So as the shift got on and got better, which is kind of strange yesterday. Instead of the weather intensifying, the weather kind of died out a little bit yesterday. And once it died out enough, they eventually canceled the AFPs. They eventually canceled the eastbound AFP first. By the time I left work, the westbound AFP was still active, but I'm pretty sure that was going to get canceled pretty much just before that. And they canceled the two AFPs going into the Northeast. They just canceled them. It's like all that work and just poof, gone. Yep, no longer needed. It's kind of a timing thing. Looking back at it, it's kind of humorous that how much work and stress that caused. And by the time I was left, it was like, oh, look, canceled them. Well, the thunderstorms didn't go away. And what happened is the weather died out far enough north, and there was now just a smaller line of thunderstorms over where were we over Texas. It wasn't as long. It was lower. So basically flights could from Atlanta Center could fly through Memphis Center again. Therefore they didn't have to go down into Houston Center, which caused the big constraint to start with. So I know my thoughts were kind of a little bit jumbled, constrained, and bejangled. I don't even think that's a word. So yeah, it was busy. It was busy in a good way. So we're gonna move on to the life part of the show. We'll talk about what's going on with us lately. So, life is continuing here in the Carol's land, and everything is going well. We're still getting ready to we're still getting ready to move, and moving moving's a process, especially when you're building a house. And I'm sorry, folks, but you're going to hear me talk about moving until probably November or December, when we actually finally get to move into our house. But I think that's what I think that's what I like about building a house is the fact that you get everything you want pretty much right away, and it's what we're doing. That's how we're doing this. We're planning. So when me and my wife build a house, we don't just buy the house off the shelf. And off the shelf to me means we don't just buy the house and the plans that the builder has. The builder that we work with, the builder that we use to build this house, and the builder we're using to build the house, our new house. That builder allows you to customize the house a little bit. It's going to be we can move walls, we can add things. Like one example is um we want to move the breakfast area in the original floor plan of the house is too small. It's perfect little breakfast nook for like a small 4-seat table. The problem is I don't have a small 4-seat table sized family. That's why we're getting a new house. So we're moving that wall in the breakfast area out 3 feet. We're expanding that whole little section of the house 3 feet out in the basement, and then upstairs in the master bedroom also get 3 feet bonus. Well, you pay for that, obviously, but it's adjustments like that that make building the house fun for us. Uh, Doing things different in the basement. We're not going to be finished in the basement right away. We're not having a finished basement right away. That's going to be a project that we will finish within hopefully our first year of being there. But I was talking with my wife, and I'm like, it's easy to close off a wall when we go and finish the basement. It's going to be extremely difficult to make a wall bigger, especially because some of the walls that we got rid of in the basement, or the one big wall we got rid of the basement, was a structural load bearing wall. And so they're going to have to put a larger beam to help support that. But we got rid of the wall. They have to put in a bigger beam. But now I can't go back later and put in the beam and open it up. So our theory is that we're going to start with a big open basement. And if we need to close it up later when we finish it, we have that time. But it'll be open to start. And so going through the list and all of that, and now it's now that whole list is done and submitted, and now it comes back with all the prices and everything. And you're like, okay, here's the price for this, and this. All right, well, that's fine. Whatever, that's what it costs. This is what I want. Just do it. And so that's what phase we're in now. Like I said, we have our lot already. I don't think I've said this on the podcast before, but the coolest part of us moving, and we're moving to, we're not moving far. We're moving literally to the other side of our small town here in Georgia. Technically, we're moving to a new town. We're moving to Sharpsburg from Noonan. So we're moving just to the other side of town. And but the really cool part that we're both my wife Naomi and I are really excited about is we're going to be 3 minutes from church. And with our involvement in our parish and our involvement where we are at church, there's 3 places, like, you add things to your calendar, and I always add a location in Apple because it tells me how long it's going to get there. It gives me a travel time. I can help plan that better in there. So there's always 3 options right at the top: home, work, church. Those are our 3 options of places where I always spend most of my time at. We're either at home, I'm either at work, or we're usually over at church. So those are the 2 things too. So we're excited about that. Another thing I'm excited about in the new house, and Mariana kind of hinted on that in the chat room, we're building a detached garage, and that detached garage is going to have a second level. Now, that second level, I've already claimed for myself. That is that's my room. That's my level. That's where I'm going. That's my home. That's what I'm doing. That's where I'm gonna have a recording studio. Is if I'm still gonna be working midnights for a while, which I'm pretty sure I'm going to be, that's where I'm going to want to go through and sit. And I was thinking about like putting a Murphy bed up there. So when I roll in at 5 or 6 in the morning, home from work after midnight shift, going upstairs above the garage to sleep, sleeping a solid amount of time there. There's no kids to bother me. The kids don't have to worry about being quiet or anything like that. I am now just in the garage. It's almost like I have a crash pad or an apartment and all of that. So that's what I really want as well. I'm also thinking about making it a complete manland, putting a bar in there and a couple of ideas that I've had with the bar. I haven't really picked one yet. But my grandfather, I've talked about this on the podcast. My grandfather served in the Navy in World War II. So when he served in the Navy, my mom still has his radio, his helmet and radio and all that stuff from the Navy. So that's World War II era radioman headgear that he flew with. So there's that. So I kind of, and then I have my uncle had an M1 Grand. So now here's a World War II era rifle, World War II era helmet. I almost kind of want to do had an idea of a themed of like a World War II officers club with like a flight squadrons officers club, something like that. It was an idea of making a manland and kind of doing it an World War II aviation themed manland. Or I could just do it as a Carol's Land and do it based on family history and family history that we have now. Family is very important to me, and I think it's important to preserve your family's history so you can pass that story on to your kids. So your people get remembered, your family gets remembered. I think that's important as well. So I was thinking maybe doing like just family stuff and old family photos and people and things like that. Or there could be just the straight up aviation hangar theme. I have a bunch of models I did when I was a kid. I still have them. They're in a box. Hang those all over the place. Put JEP charts underneath the bar. Like kind of sink underneath the bar and have charts in that. Do a whole wall in sectionals. Like do a sectional chart wall, which I always thought would be fun to have, or an low IFR chart wall. These are all the things that are running through my mind when I'm going through and building the house. So it's kind of fun for me with that as well. What else? So we got pretty much most of the home improvement projects on the current house that we want to have done. There's one more that we need to do, and then we'll be need to start tidying, packing, purging stuff up. So that'll be an easy process for when we actually do move. We need to figure out the timing on when we're going to move or like put the house up. The real estate market is very quick. Things are moving pretty rapidly here in the south, in our area, the southwest metro area of Atlanta. Houses are selling like in a week's time, a couple of days if it's a good one. So we don't want to sell ourselves homeless, basically. So that's a stress and a consideration that we have. And yeah, all in all, we get to go to the design center on the 14th of May 17th, something like that. We're gonna go to the design center and pick out all of the stuff and spend a bunch of money, basically. Because why not go to the design center? I mean, that's why they have those things. You go there and spend money and you build the house that you want. And pretty much what I'm going to do is build the house that I want. So I think I'm running out of things to talk about, things to say. I hope this was not too big of a scramble. This is what happens when the podcaster does not do any show notes and think about any specific order he wants to talk about things. It was kind of verbal diarrhea. We'll just call it that. It was just a explosion of words and thoughts out of my mouth. So, with that, I think we're gonna wrap it up here, and we'll thanks everyone that came into the chat room as well. I hope this kicks off your day of aviation podcasts. I know our friends over at Plane Talkie UK are recording right now, and I know our good friends Jeff, Dana, Nick, and Jeff and Stephanie will be recording soon as well. So, if you're an air traffic controller out there and you want to talk about, especially the center, if you're a center controller and you want to talk, or if you work in a facilities traffic management unit, contact me. Let's talk. Let's share information. Let's become friends. Things like that. I think that's what's great about this industry is we all have a willingness to share our side of the operation. And I think once you understand someone else's side of the operation, you have it. It's better. Once you, yeah, once you have the knowledge of someone else's perspective, it makes your perspective a lot better. So, with that, I'm gonna hit this button here. And everyone have a good one. Let's talk about the closing stuff. Show notes for this episode won't be many of them. Maybe I'll put some pictures of the weather from yesterday. That'll be flyinglife.com/2018/35 for the show notes for this episode. Opening and closing musics from bensound.com and purpleplanet.com. Good free stuff. Good stuff there. I mean, great, good royalty-free music over there. Podcast is over on Stitcher Radio as well, and then also if you got a lot of money laying around and you want to help support the show, because I don't want to get sponsors, don't want to become a sponsor supported show. If you want to help offset the costs of the media hosting, website hosting, all of those fun things, head on over to patreon.com, Flying in Life there. So until next time, which will probably be sometime later this week, maybe next week, Dispatcher Greg and I will probably get back together again. So until next time, have a good one, everybody. Woohoo! Thanks for stopping by, everybody. Have a great weekend. It's my Sunday. I go back to work tomorrow night. Have a good one.